Is the Premier League title race over? In this video, we're going to break down where Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City sit and why I don't think it's quite over yet. It was a crazy weekend in the Premier League, and obviously we're going to start off with Liverpool, which I think is the most shocking result of them all, because Palace at home, with all due respect, is a lot harder than Aston Villa at home, and obviously Luton Town for Man City. There are some massive issues at Liverpool at the moment. The last couple of weeks, they have crumbled like I've not seen a Jurgen Klopp side crumble in many, many a year. And I did worry about this for Liverpool because ultimately, when a manager, has that kind of finality in his relationship with the club, he's leaving. There's no kind of, with Guardiola, for example, with Arteta, they might be there for 5 more years. And those players have to understand that they're might be playing for these guys for a longer period of time. When you know that Jurgen Klopp is leaving, even though I would never doubt the enthusiasm and the commitment that these Liverpool players have for the manager, there will be a 5% drop off because you're realising that once it crumbles, once it falls away a little bit, then Liverpool will be looking at the future. And players do that, and maybe even looking at different clubs. And some of these players that have come in on the belief they're playing for Jurgen Klopp in a longer term might be disappointed about the fact that he's going. And therefore, performances on the pitch can be a little bit off, only marginally. And that's how you lose a game marginally, like Liverpool did 1-0 at home to Crystal Palace. There are 2 massive issues for this Liverpool squad that they have to address. They've got the likes of Fulham in the league, they've got obviously Atalanta away in Italy, and Everton coming up in the league. Liverpool obviously missed so many chances against Palace. Was it bottling it? Some people said that about Arsenal, about the Trossard miss, for example. Is it bottling it, or is it just a lack of progress in that department? Because we talk about Darwin Núñez, who there was a period kind of December, January, February. He looked imperious, didn't he? He was scoring so many quality goals. His numbers looking far better this season than the previous one. And he's regressed a little bit, hasn't he? He's really, really regressed. That volley, even though I don't think it was the easiest chance of the night, in my opinion, of the afternoon. He has to score that volley. He really does. And the fact that he isn't able to kind of put it into the corner of the net, from 8 yards out, 9 yards out from a kind of volley situation, that is a regression. That is Darwin Núñez not living up to the money that Liverpool spent. This guy isn't a £20 million gamble, £50 million gamble. He's close to a, £85 million signing. It's a lot of money, and he has to be hitting the corner with that chance, in my opinion. Obviously, Mohamed Salah probably misses the best chance. Very similar almost to the Trossard chance in terms of it bounces. It's a side foot chance, very close to the net. And he isn't able to kind of just tuck it next to the post, just hit it straight, and he kind of bounces off the Crystal Palace defender, I think it was, or keeper. The lack of conviction in this front three would be alarming. Now, obviously, Jota is a big miss for Liverpool. That's circumstantial. I think Liverpool's squad is thin. I think they've been torn apart by Atalanta. It could have been 4 or 5 really in that game. So I think Liverpool's issue is a little bit more circumstantial than Arsenal. We'll talk about that in a minute, because I think the squad wasn't ready for a quadruple challenge. It really wasn't. I think there might be Liverpool fans that sit there and think, I wish we maybe been knocked out of the Europa League earlier, potentially, just to keep that squad together a little bit more. And it reminds you of the Arsenal season last season, where they were in the Europa League and they got too stretched. And I think that's what's happening. I think a lot of these players, again, I rarely doubt commitment, especially in a Liverpool side with Jurgen Klopp, but I do doubt their adrenaline. I do doubt their kind of their ability to be excited and to run through brick walls. You can't keep doing that week in, week out. You can't do it from Europa League to League Cup finals to Premier League games. It's very, very hard without more players of quality. If Núñez doesn't do it, I think he's not been doing it for a few weeks, you still have to play him because there's no one else, because Cody Gakpo really hasn't done well since he's come in, and Jota's been injured, which again is circumstantial. So the front three isn't performing. Salah, since his injury, has not been good enough, in my opinion, as well. And Diaz keeps missing chances. So the front three, they're all missing chances. No one's taking the ball by the horns. And then the second thing, it has to be the midfield for me, because they're the glue. They're the thing, they're the part of the side that control football matches. There's a lack of control against Crystal Palace. It was too end-to-end. Palace could have had a couple of chances. Matete was doing all sorts of mischief to the back four. He had far too much space, and the protection from Endo hasn't been there for a few weeks. Wasn't particularly good against Man United from recollection as well. Lots of space in behind. Again, that might be a legs thing, but if you're not offering protection massively behind you and you're not able to get on the ball and control the game and just stifle pressure by just knocking the ball simple. I mean, as soon as, even someone like Trent came on, as soon as he got on the ball, he's trying to do a half volley 40 yards across the face of the pitch, and Liverpool lost the ball. So Liverpool have got a real issue in their midfield where they can't control a game of football. They don't offer enough protection. I don't care if it's Nesta, Maldini. Van Dijk and Konate have been absolutely fantastic. Robertson was fantastic in the game as well. If that midfield isn't able to offer protection, I don't know where you go from here. Liverpool and Arsenal will be relying on Man City drawing games. I don't think City will lose a game in the league. We can debate the Champions League. We can debate FA Cup finals. Anything can happen in cup competitions. But these two sides can get there with a couple of draws for Man City. They have to keep winning games. And something has to change for Liverpool in that midfield against the likes of Fulham and Everton. I could see a world where Liverpool don't lose another game in the league, but they have to keep winning. They have to get maximum points. Let me know what you think in the comments down below about Liverpool in the Premier League title race. Well, I've not talked about Man City's win against Luton Town. It was probably the most standard win of them all. With all due respect to Luton Town, you're obviously going to put a few past them if you're Man City, especially at the Etihad. Obviously, the points total is huge. City have now got the advantage. There's no debate about that. I know there's a little bit reverse psychology about it, but you need points to win league titles. When it comes to April, I was scared as a City fan because the points weren't there for City. Now they are, and of course, City are favourites. There is a glimmer of hope, and that is that City keep conceding goals. Obviously, Ross Barkley scored for Luton Town late on. It's obviously a consolation goal in that regard, but Real Madrid are scoring goals. Crystal Palace scored goals against us last week as well. If those goals come early, if those goals came against Spurs, penultimate game of the season, the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool can keep on the heels of Man City. The back line isn't settled. Rico Lewis is coming in. Ruben Diaz isn't at the top level at the moment in terms of form, in my opinion. Akanji's fantastic. John Stones is in and out the side, maybe injury prone as well. Picks up an injury against Real Madrid. Ake in and out the side because of injury. Kyle Walker as well. Obviously, Ederson came back, and there's been a bit of a shift there with Ortega. So the Premier League title race relies on clean sheets at the back end of the season. It relies on defensive stability. That's the one question for City fans and for Guardiola will be, is that defensive stability there? And can sides nick goals? Can sides do something a little bit dangerous and score early and put City under pressure? That is certainly possible. This City side have not been fantastic against Big Six opposition, and Spurs obviously represents a really difficult one, especially away from home as well. The Champions League, we have to talk about that because if City lose in the Champions League, that is confidence drained. If City win, then obviously there's more games to play, and the squad can get thinner in that regard because obviously there's potential to Bayern Munich or even Arsenal. Now, Arsenal could beat Bayern Munich on Wednesday. I'll be obviously talking about that on the channel, so make sure you subscribe. If Arsenal get to play Man City and then beat Man City potentially in the semi-final of the Champions League, there is an opportunity for Arsenal to influence Man City's form and potential fitness going into the Premier League title race. So that's where it's interesting. Obviously, there's lots of positives to Man City. The likes of Kovacic coming in, be able to influence games. Nunes coming in, Alvarez coming in, Doku coming in. The squad is definitely healthier than Liverpool. The confidence is far better, in my opinion, than Arsenal. The experience is there as well. Obviously, City are favourites. It's absolutely huge. I think the records are massive for Guardiola as well. This guy's a student of the history of football. He cares about Sir Alex Ferguson. He cares about the great sides. He cares about Arsene Wenger. He's a massive fan of Arsene Wenger. He will be looking at some of these records thinking, can I really surmount myself in the Premier League era and do something special? Winning 4 in a row is now a likelihood for Man City, which is crazy. There'll be a lot of criticism and people saying I'm smug about that, but City have been absolutely phenomenal in the last few weeks. Not lost a game in 17, I think it is. There are some cracks defensively, and we have to look at that as City fans, and Guardiola has to look at that as the potential for draws, because draws, again, as I said, could let Arsenal and Liverpool back into the title race, particularly Arsenal, who have got goal difference on their side. If City drop 2 points, Arsenal win, you can match it up again, and it goes to goal difference come the end of the season. I still think there's twists and turns in this saga. We have to talk about Arsenal. They had the hardest game of the weekend, no question about it. Aston Villa. I think they ran on adrenaline. I think their legs were a bit flat. People were questioning Havertz in midfield. I think he should have trusted Smith Rowe. I really do. We saw him trust him against Luton Town. I know they're different opposition, but they're both at home, those games. I think you've got to trust Smith Rowe. I think the question about Jorginho not coming in is a valid one, unless we don't know something that Arteta does in terms of his fitness, his legs, his energy, for example. So the Jorginho one I don't quite get, but the Havertz one I do understand Arsenal fans' frustration. For me, Smith Rowe has to come in. Partey has to play a little bit earlier as well. He solidifies the midfield. He's not been trusted. He was absolutely phenomenal last season, and he's not been trusted in the same way as well. But Emil Smith Rowe is the one for me. Came on, he was decent against Aston Villa, moved the ball pretty well, didn't have enough time to influence the game, and it was kind of from a negative position as well. Arsenal, for me, are in the worst situation. They got Wolves, they got Chelsea, they got the North London Derby, they got Bayern Munich away in the next 4. And Wolves away is weirdly kind of like the banana skin that seems biggest to me because of how good they are at Molineux. Obviously, they've taken huge points off City this season and other big 6 sides at Molineux. What Gary O'Neil is doing is absolutely fantastic. Arsenal have got such incredible capabilities. Arsenal have been absolutely phenomenal since the turn of the year. They really have. And I think the issue for Arsenal is about mentality. Arsenal have to find a way of getting back to basics. Is Arteta culpable of ruining the rhythm of this Arsenal side by making too many changes against Aston Villa? I think there's a world where that's feasible, and they have to get back to routine. They have to get back to a rhythm. They have to get Kirill back into the back 4. For me, whatever you say about this Arsenal side, if they do or don't win the Premier League title this season, they gave themselves a chance a little bit out of nowhere because of how many points they dropped against Fulham and West Ham turn of the year, because they said, let's be ugly first and we'll see what we can do on top. So against Aston Villa, they went back to when they floundered a little bit, where they tried to be a little bit too aesthetic, a little bit too soft in midfield, and bringing Zinchenko into the back 4. It kind of released all that ugly defensive kind of brilliance that Arsenal have had in the last few weeks, where they've basically been unplayable when you attack them. And they sacrificed that for Zinchenko, and I'm not too sure why. Was the idea for him to maybe come into midfield and create, overlaps and kind of outnumber and outpower the Aston Villa midfield? I'm not sure. It didn't work. I think Zinchenko now has to be treated as a kind of 15-minute substitute to control games in the remainder of the season. Kirill has to be brought back even slightly early. If there's injury concerns, etc. to Kirill, I'm not so sure, but he was on the bench against Aston Villa. Kirill has to come back in. The back 4 looks settled apart from that. Zinchenko was a massive miss. And now Kai Havertz cannot be considered a midfielder, in my opinion. There's a lot of players on that Arsenal bench that could play in midfield. And I really do not get how he's playing in midfield. Running from deep, it didn't work against Aston Villa. He doesn't move the ball quickly enough. He doesn't cover enough ground. Really, you're almost playing with one midfielder, aren't you? Because Odegaard likes to push up and spread wide. So does Kai Havertz when he's in midfield. You're kind of playing just with Declan Rice against a 3-man sort of central midfield unit in Aston Villa. It didn't work, and Arsenal ripped up the rule book that brought them success in the last few months, and that is frustrating if you're an Arsenal fan. They've got points that can get them there if City draw. They've got goal difference better than Liverpool as well, and they've got form to go back to, a little bit better than Man City, a little bit better than Liverpool. They can draw on the form that's kept them in the Champions League running. The comeback against Bayern Munich was impressive. If they go to Bayern Munich and win, and they win the next game in the league as well, the confidence can come back really, really quick. They can go top of the Premier League in certain games earlier than Man City, earlier than Liverpool, and put pressure on Man City, particularly if Man City make it far in the Champions League. That could be another pressure as well. So Arsenal, Liverpool, definitely floundering. A really poor weekend for them, but I don't think they're out of it. Come on, it's a City draw away. Unless you think City are going to win every single game, which is unlikely, then obviously the two have a massive, massive chance. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and obviously make sure you check out future videos coming up, particularly the Champions League running, which I'm looking forward to massively. I'll see you very, very soon.